Have you ever really thought about your last name? I mean, really thought about it? Today, we're going on a trip around the globe to unpack the incredible stories of work, family, and history that are hidden inside the world's most common surnames. All right, let's get into it. But first, let me ask you something. Do you happen to know the most common last name where you live? And more importantly, do you know what it actually means? You can even pause for a second if you want, because by the end of this, you're going to see that every single name has a story.
You see, every surname is kind of like a tiny fossil, a perfect little snapshot from a moment in time. They can tell us what our ancestors did for a living, who their father was, maybe where they came from. They're basically the first clue in our own personal history.
So to really get a handle on these global patterns, let's kick things off with a name that I bet is super familiar to you. It's a perfect example of one of the most common ways people got their names in the first place.
And that brings us to our first big category, the occupational name. Yeah, for a huge chunk of human history, you really were what you did. If you were the town blacksmith or the person who ran the mill, that wasn't just your job. It became your identity, and then your family's name for generations.
There is something kind of poetic about it, right? The most essential jobs in any community, the smith, the miller, their work was so fundamental that their names have actually outlasted entire empires. And we see this exact same pattern all over the world. Okay, so check this out. What's so amazing here is how the name Smith, which just means a worker in metal, draws a perfect map of the English-speaking world. The UK, the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, it's number one. It's like a direct linguistic fingerprint of a shared history. And this just shows it's not just an English thing, not by a long shot. Over in Germany and Switzerland, the top name is Miller or Miller. In Ukraine, it's Melnik, pretty much the same meaning. Then you have Turkey, where you find Yilmaz, a name that means unyielding and was often tied to soldiers. It's like the whole world was built by people whose job titles became their legacy. All right, let's switch gears to the next major theme. Another incredibly common way people got a last name was just by being identified by their father. And this tradition is so powerful, it has shaped the identities of entire countries.
You know, there's an official term for this. It's called a patronymic name. And the idea is beautiful in its simplicity. You just take your dad's first name, add a little something to it, and boom, that's your new family name. A direct line right back through your ancestry.
So, how's it work? Well, it's actually super straightforward. You take a common first name like Ivan. Then you add a suffix like ov, which basically means son of Ivan. And what do you get? Ivanov, the single most common last name in both Russia and Bulgaria. Simple, effective, and totally historic. And just look at how this idea pops up everywhere. In Mexico, you've got Hernandez, son of Fernando. In Scandinavia, it's Hansen and Anderson, son of Hans, son of Anders. In Serbia, Jovanovic, son of Jovan. What's absolutely wild is that cultures all over the planet, with no contact with each other, independently came up with the exact same idea. Now, sometimes the map of names wasn't drawn by jobs or by fathers, but by something much, much bigger: empire. The spread of colonial powers pushed languages, religions, and, surnames right across oceans. And this slide right here shows one of the clearest examples you'll ever see. On the left, you've got the top names in Spain and Portugal like Garcia and Silva. And on the right, you see the result. Surnames with Spanish roots like Rodríguez, González, and Hernández absolutely dominate the map of Latin America. It's a direct echo of colonial history.
And to put that into perspective, the name Rodríguez, just by itself, is the most common surname in at least 6 different countries in the Americas. We're talking Colombia, Cuba, Costa Rica, and more. That is a staggering cultural and linguistic legacy.
But we're not done yet. Beyond jobs, fathers, and empires, surnames came from all sorts of fascinating places, each one telling a unique story about what was important to the very first people who had them. You know, for so many people throughout history, the most central part of their identity was their faith. So it's really no surprise that many of the world's most common surnames are just direct expressions of religious belief. From Muhammad, honoring the prophet in places like Egypt and Tanzania, to De la Cruz, meaning of the cross, in the Philippines. These names connect millions of people to a shared spiritual heritage. You see it with Devi in India, meaning goddess, and Cohen in Israel, which points to a priestly lineage going back thousands of years. And finally, we've got some of my favorites, the names that are just simple, direct descriptions of a person. Maybe it was their hair color, their personality, or even just the fact that they were the new guy in town. I mean, how cool are these?
In Italy, Rossi, the most common name, probably started as a nickname for someone with red hair. In the Netherlands, it's de Jong, the young, maybe to tell a son apart from his dad. And in Poland and the Czech Republic, the name Nuok means newcomer, which literally tells a story of someone starting a new life in a new place.
And we can't wrap this up without talking about the sheer scale of some of these names. Because of things like royal dynasties and massive populations, names like Wang in China, Nguyen in Vietnam, and Kim in Korea are shared by tens of millions of people. It's a totally different kind of shared identity.
So what's the big takeaway here? Well, from the job you did, to the father you had, to the God you worshipped, every single surname is a thread in the giant, messy, beautiful tapestry of human history.
These names, they're the first chapter of our own story, and they connect every last one of us to these huge themes of human life, work, family, belief, and the constant movement of people. It's proof that we're all part of a much, much bigger story.
Which brings us right back to where we started. Now that you've seen the stories hiding in names all across the globe, I'll leave you with one last question to chew on. What does your name say about you?